Hi, this is Barry with Barry's Workshop. Today I'm going to review the Central Forge number 4 hand plane. Okay, as far as the plane itself, the casting of the plane was very, very rough. There are what I would consider deep gouges. It was mostly flat, not perfectly flat. But there are deep gouges and there are little pits, apparently from the casting of air bubbles or something in the casting itself. Now, I'm not convinced that that's going to keep it from doing its job, especially if you're doing rougher work and you're not doing it purely as a high-end smooth plane. But both the base and the sides were very, very roughly machined. And also, the sides are not perpendicular. The base is slightly wider than the sides. So if you want the sides to be perpendicular, you're going to have to machine down or sand down this edge to get it where it's perpendicular when these sides are parallel. So it's kind of, the base is wider. It could be done. I'm probably not going to spend the effort doing that because it's not that important to me at this point to have that perpendicular side. But it's very rough and not even, and there are little pits. I was able to put this on some sandpaper. I've got a granite tile that I use to flatten, and when I did, I was able to get some of these scratch marks from machining out where it looked like it was mostly flat, but there's still deep grooves in it to machine away those pits. I mean, I could find another one. I'm not going to bother doing that. I think I spent about half an hour with some sandpaper, and I got it where it's basically flat enough to use, but it's not smooth, it's not polished, it's quite rough. Taking apart, it's got the normal lever, like a number 4, and it has a blade and cap iron, which I'll show you in a second. The frog is also roughly machined. These is not polished. It has some rough machine marks. I don't think that's critical to the operation. It is adjustable just like a Stanley. As far as the front and back, it's got a little screw to here to pull it back, forward and back, and it's got the 2 screw here's to hold it in place once it's locked down. I don't really feel like adjusting it because it's about where it needs to be. If you wanted to take this apart, you'd have to get the lever out of the way to try to machine it flat. You probably could do that, but it's just not worth it to me to mess with that. The handle is this handle and the knob are both plastic, and it's fine. It's not pretty, but it's functional. One of the problems I had was here. It was cast in a 2-piece mold, and where that casting line was, there was a little ridge on the handle, and it made it very uncomfortable. I started getting a blister on my pinky, so I had to take some sandpaper and sand that off. It's gone now. It feels a little bit rough, but it doesn't hurt my hand anymore. It's a little bit on the small side. I don't have particularly large hands, but the handle itself, the tote, is just a bit on the small side. I could possibly see making another one and another knob. These parts are, this one's actually a 2-piece. It's decent. This knob, it spins a lot. There's a lot of play in this knob. If you want to back off, there's 3 full turns to back it off before it starts pulling the blade back, and then you got 3 turns forward to tighten it up again. That's a little bit of a hassle, but hey, $11. So the blade was machined very, very roughly. It has a lot of marks. It was not flat. I was able to get it to a usable state, but I still didn't get this face edge flat. I was able to get a pretty good edge on it, and it was sharp enough to shave my arm. So you can sharpen it, but it is still not flat. I got it back far enough that the cap iron fits on there, and it makes a good surface there, and of course it forms the edge. So it was good enough, but it's not flat. The cap iron itself did not have a good surface here, so when you matched it up to it and you clamped it down, there was a gap. And I think this is common for lower end planes. So I machined back this bottom of this edge so that when it's clamped down, it sits flat on there, and it's So now it's straight and flat on the back. And then also cleaned up the front so that those, when the chips come out, they kind of just go over the edge. So in the condition that you get this plane, you will have problems with the chip breaker, because what will happen is it won't form a good, it won't form a good edge with the blade, and the shavings will get caught underneath there, and it messes with your progress. You have to keep stopping and cleaning out, and it just gums up the works. So you'll have to spend some time doing that. It wasn't a lot of work, because this is about 60 thousandths. The blade itself is about 70 thousandths, which is on the thin side. This is really not substantial. The aftermarket ones can be upwards of 80, 90, or even a quarter or an eighth of an inch. The blades, I've seen them from the Stanley, I think is 80, and I've seen them up to close to like 100, 110 on some of the aftermarket ones. So this is also not very thick blade. That's one of the reasons why I didn't spend so much time trying to clean up that recessed area, because I didn't want to grind away all the metal and have a super thin blade. If you find that the body of the plane itself is okay, acceptable, it's probably worth getting another blade and another chip breaker. It will cost significantly more than the plane itself, but I'm hopeful that getting that would make this a very usable plane. But having said that, it is usable if you clean up the blade and you clean up the base itself, and you flatten up that chip breaker. When you put it together, it does make shavings. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back together real quick. I've got about maybe between a 32nd and a 16th on the distance between the chip breaker and the edge, and I just kind of ran it over the whetstone, so it's pretty sharp right now. Goes right in here, bevel side down. And then snap the lever, and it's already adjusted. The lateral adjustment, by the way, it works fine. The depth adjustment is a little bit stiff, but it works. So I'm going to take it over to my bench and get a piece of wood and try to make some shavings. In summary, the Harbor Freight No. 4 hand plane, while it's a great price, it's also a bit rough out of the box. You'll have to spend some time cleaning up the cap iron and the blade and flattening out the base. And even still, it's going to be a little rough. But it's a usable plane. So if saving some money and doing a little work to get something workable seems like a good trade-off, you might want to look into the Harbor Freight No. 4 plane. I appreciate you watching. I hope you find this review helpful. I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot.